now, please do not embarrass me and yourselves today, okay? Now, I still have the gifts. Just to tell the ones who came today the first time, we do every time a recap, okay, when we start. We did one yesterday, we did one on Monday, sorry, on Tuesday. Tuesday was about the last 3 sessions that we had, or the first 3 sessions actually, which go into the issue of, we started with Islam in Africa, so how did Islam spread in Africa? Then we went over to Al-Andalus, and then we went over to the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan Peninsula. And then we started on Tuesday, we went on Tuesday with the Americas, okay? Why the Americas, quickly? Because?
North and South.
Because there's North and South America, that's why we use the plural, right? Yeah. So we said the Americas, and in between there is the Caribbean Sea, right? And then we said yesterday, we mentioned the issue of Islam in Asia. So we focused on 2 specific countries, the biggest ones, China and India, right? Okay. And today we're gonna finish with coming back home. So we're going to the country which is the closest, I heard and I read, to British culture and British customs and everything, which is Australia. Okay, and you know that the Queen is still, you know, the Queen of Australia. They're still part of the Commonwealth. Australia, and we're moving back to the UK. And we're going to finish here on our ground here. Basically, we're going to finish back home. Now, but we're going to do a quick recap. Quickly, we're not going back to all the sessions, but there are some things that I really need you to know, right? And it's the 3rd time we're doing it today again, so please don't embarrass me. So, what is 711? 711, quickly. Who is that? Tariq bin Ziyad, what? Listen, we have people here who haven't attended the classes before. Now you're telling me Tariq bin Ziyad, Gibraltar, what? Clear sentences. I'm telling my 10-year-old daughter when she answers a question, you know, to write clear sentences. Now I have to tell you. Now, clear sentences. What happened? Tariq bin Ziyad at 711. He arrived in... Okay, I'm going to help you now. Okay, Tariq bin Ziyad arrived in Gibraltar. Gibraltar is part of the Britain still, right? The British colony in the south of Spain. Okay? And Gibraltar is called Gibraltar because of Tariq bin Ziyad, right? Yeah. So what does it mean, Gibraltar?
The mountain.
It comes from Arabic, Jibr at-Tariq, which means the mountain, the rock, the hill of Tariq. Tariq bin Ziyad being the general. What was he? Was he an Arab?
No.
He was not an Arab. He was one of the indigenous people living in North Africa. Berber. Right? Okay. 711 he arrived in Spain, and from there on they went on into France. What happened in 732 then?
There's a war between France and Muslim.
Not France. There was no France at that time. There was no France as a nation, as a country. There was no France at that time. It was a war between the Muslims coming from Al-Andalus and several Christian nations that came together, right? Okay? Okay, so several Christian nations that came together to fight the Muslims not to go further. Where did this happen?
In 752.
Yeah, where? In Tours and Poitiers. What is Tours and Poitiers?
City next to Paris.
Not next to, around 50 to 60 kilometers from Paris. Okay? And I would like to mention something here now that we mentioned this also.
This is was between the mountain between Spain and
No.
and France.
Tours and Poitiers? No. Tours and Poitiers, 2 cities. Tours and Poitiers, 2 cities. Okay? And these 2 cities or 2 towns are around 50-60 kilometers to the south of Paris. So up to these 2 cities, that's where the battles happened, in Tours and in Poitiers. Up to that's where the Muslim army came, more or less, if it's not true. You remember what I said, a Muslim army or not, we don't know that exactly. But that's where these battles, 732, happened. And the date is important because it's used nowadays, and even today is more important. It's used nowadays from some radical, right-wing groups in France, to basically remind the population of these terrible terrorist Muslims, who made it up to here, and then we beat them back. So, thanks God, we got them out of our country. Now we have them back again. Now they're creating trouble like that yesterday. All right? So, really is what I said yesterday. We have to really be aware of the situation around us. I fear that it doesn't go right. I really fear it doesn't go right. Things happen in Madrid, things happen in London, things happen in New York, things happen now in Paris, things happen in certain other parts of the world, and it's always, certain blame goes to certain people always. So I don't know where this is going to end. But it's just to be aware. You remember we spoke about Bosnia, and I told you it's not about being paranoid, but it's about sleeping with open eyes, being aware of what's happening around you.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it's about. Good. Don't know, man.
Half a book. Half a book.
Cover.
All right, let's see. 1453.
Sultan Fateh.
Opening Constantinople.
What, Sultan Fateh?
The Hadith of Prophet. He was the one who conquered Istanbul. Okay. He opened the Istanbul. So
Good, excellent, okay.
now give me the book.
I was about to give it to you, but like this? No way. What do you think we are in Afghanistan or what? Give me the book, man.
Too big.
Kalashnikov, what? All right. Take this one, it's a very nice one. Okay? There you go. Okay, now. Good. Yes, that's worth it, really. 1453, very important date because that's when Constantinople was opened. We use the term open, we use the verb open simply because we don't want to refer to it as a conquest. Okay? A conquest goes together with blood. And if we look at the history of Constantinople, the way it was opened by Sultan Fateh, he walked into Constantinople. Of course there was a fight. I'm not saying that they came with roses there, but of course there was a fight and many people died. But in the end, when children and women were hiding in the Hagia Sophia, the cathedral of Istanbul, of Constantinople, they were left in peace and they were not touched. Okay? And Islamic warfare, you remember we discussed this last time, Islamic warfare is very important to know that we're not allowed to kill women, to kill children, to kill anybody who has nothing to do with the war directly, except soldiers, people who we fight directly. We're not allowed to cut trees. We're not allowed to cut, to burn agricultural land. All these things, this is Islamic warfare. That certain Muslims have not done that, that's another issue. But we're talking about what Islam tells you. Okay?
Yes.
So, according to Islam, we're not allowed to do these things. We're not even allowed to kill animals. Okay? Although it's war. So now, 1453. Then, this is something new. Now I'm hitting you here. 1789. I just wanted to see, maybe somebody knows.
This is in, I think, when Islam access to UK or
No, we're not there yet.
It's just a guess. Was it the French Revolution?
Yeah! That, come on, here it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
again, can you repeat?
Yeah, the French Revolution, 1789. Why do you think I put the French Revolution there? Why 1789? Why the French Revolution? What is important about it? Quickly. Why?
Because nationalism started, French nationalism spread.
Thank you. The ideology of the world changed. There were people before were thinking in localities, local, we come, where you from? I'm from Ireland. Where you from? I'm from London, I'm from Paris, I'm from where? People suddenly think in nation, in terms of nation. Which nation do you belong to? They start identifying themselves with a nation state has borders that includes people, but also excludes people. And this is where the problem lies. Nationalism has an issue, has a problem, and especially for us as Muslims, even more so, because Islam is actually in contrast. It's the opposite of nationalism. We don't think in borders, okay, A Muslim is somebody who lives, who has accepted to say Shahada, who believes in Allah and His prophets and His books, and he can be living anywhere in the world. Okay? Male or female. Okay? Anywhere in the world. No borders at all. That's the Ummah. And that's the opposite to the idea of nationalism. 1789, French Revolution. Now, some terms, Constantinople version is before already. Constantinople was opened in 1453. Al-Andalus, quickly again, what was Al-Andalus?
What's the 711?
Al-Andalus.
700.
The Muslims.
What is Al-Andalus?
The Muslims entering into south of Spain.
But what is Al-Andalus?
It's the area of south of Spain.
Which, just south of Spain?
Liberia.
The Iberian Peninsula, which includes 2 or 3 countries, if you want.
Yes, 2 is Spain and Portugal.
Spain and Portugal and Gibraltar, right?
Yes.
Okay? So, Al-Andalus, the Muslims called it Al-Andalus. Nowadays, there's a province in the south of Spain that's called Andalusia. But this is just a province. But the whole of the Iberian Peninsula used to be called Al-Andalus and was under Muslim rule, except the north, a very tiny bit, which is called Galicia, which is Galicia nowadays in Spain. Okay? And the Basque, the country of the Basque, a very small, tiny part of Spain. Now, Fraxine?
A Muslim base.
Fraxine or Fraxinetum, yeah, in Latin. Fraxinetum is a Latin term. Fraxine is a French term. I give you some clues already. French.
It's a city in south of France. It's where the Muslims.
It's not a city. First of all, it doesn't exist anymore, right?
It doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, so what did it used to be? It used to?
It's like a stop point where the Muslims went to Switzerland. And from there went to.
Okay, it was a base in the south of France, around 60, 70 years, okay? And that's where the Muslims actually settled, in France. Where did they come from? From Al-Andalus, from Spain, okay? And they were operating under the Sultan of Al-Andalus, actually. So they went over to Fraxine, or went over to France, which nowadays is a very tiny town in the south of France. And you know, by the way, what they produce mainly, what they live on? What do they produce in the city?
Corks.
Cork, thank you. Who showed them how to make cork? The Muslims, okay? They were aware of that, they knew exactly how to make cork, and they showed them. And today, the industry of France, the wine industry, which is one of the biggest industries of the country, could not have been without the cork on the bottle. Okay? So the influence of the knowledge that was brought over by the Muslims, you know, was important. Not only the cork industry, but next to this one, lemon. So many fruit, different types of fruit was brought over. Vegetables that they didn't have before. Oranges. They didn't have this before. They didn't know what an orange looked like. Okay, and it was brought over from the Muslims. Okay? And the same happened in Portugal and in Spain. Good. Now, what about the Mughals? That's easy.
Mongols.
Yes.
Not Mongols. Mughals. Very close, yeah. But what's the connection?
The Viking Mongols.
No, not Vikings, not Vikings, no. The Mughals, who are the Mughals? Come on, push it, guys. From yesterday.
The young dynasty.
People from Asia, Middle Phoenicia.
No, I need one person. Come on.
They
Go to
took
book.
over India.
The Muslim rulers of India, right? The last one, not the Muslim rulers, because there were others before.
Last time.
Okay, the last empires. Okay, the last empire of the Muslim empire of India before the British came, right? So why are they called Mughals? What's the connection between Mongols and Mughals?
We're from
Central Asia.
Central Asia.
That's what they are. Yes. Mongol blood, right? They came from Central Asia, from the same area where the Mongols came. There were Turkic people are from. They were Turkic people, Turkic tribes. The Mughals, okay? And what is this here? Do you remember this here? Do you remember this?
Yes,
What is that?
inshallah.
Okay, so
That's what the Spanish used to say God
not
willing.
Spanish. Look,
God
look.
willing.
Mongol, sorry. I don't know. I don't guess.
I put an X in between. It's not Spanish. They don't have an X in Spanish.
Is it Dutch?
The others.
Dutch.
Not the Spaniards, the others.
Portuguese.
The Portuguese.
Ojalá.
In Spanish, they would write it with a J, but it's the same thing. This is Spanish. Ojalá. Ojalá is Spanish, and Oxalá is Portuguese. So the Portuguese and the Spaniards, who are part of the Iberian Peninsula, which was part of Al-Andalus, use in their terminology, in their daily life, I see you tomorrow. Nos vemos mañana, ojalá. Okay? Nos vemos. They don't think of it. It's like we use I see you tomorrow, inshallah, in the Islamic terminology, meaning if Allah wants, if God wants. Now, they do not see it that way nowadays, of course, but it has become part of the language. Like more than 600 words in Spanish and in Portuguese used on a daily basis come originally from Arabic. And then, last but not least, let's see if you remember this from yesterday. Where is this here? Suriname.
In the Caribbean.
Good. Where?
The Dutch Guyana.
Good. Excellent. That deserves a book. Come on. That deserves a book. You remember still? Come on. Okay. Second already. No. That shows Yusuf, mashallah. Now, okay. Suriname, indeed, is a country in the Caribbean. Actually, it's a country which is in the north of Brazil, one of the Guyanas. Okay, you remember 3 Guyanas? Guyana, which was British, Dutch Guyana in between, and French Guyana, which is still French. Are you from there? Really? Oh, what do you do? Oh, parle français, mademoiselle. Okay, well, then you know, that's nice. Now, so Guyane Française, French Guyana, Dutch Guyana, Suriname, and why did I mention Suriname? Next to that, my wife is from Suriname. I wrote Suriname there. But why else do you think I mentioned Suriname? What is the importance in Suriname?
One of the largest population of Muslims.
You deserve another book, really. The largest, not one of the largest, the largest population in America, in the Americas, 25% Muslims. Okay, 25% Muslims. Where do they come from? Many of them, or where do they originally come from? Of course, you have any kind of population.
India.
Many India also.
Indonesia.
There is one population. There's one. Yeah, Indonesia. Why Indonesia? Because
The Dutch.
because the Dutch,
Colonized.
they had colonized Indonesia. Okay, Muslim country on the other side, and they took from there Indonesians and took them to South Africa as well as to Suriname, South America. Okay, very good. Oh, I'm happy. I'm really happy today. It's nice, mashallah. Excellent. Okay, now, okay, let's start. Let's start with that one. Quickly, some other terms. Can we divide you in? Divide you maybe in 1, 2, 3, 4 groups, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Can we do that? In 4 groups. One group, this one in front. Let's go. The brother here. Other group in the back. The group of the brothers here and sisters here, basically. Okay. Right. Girls here. Okay. Now, guys.
Yeah.
Take a look. Take your mobile phones out and take a look, or for whoever knows, it's good. But take a look at the term Aborigines. What do you know about Aborigines, and what can you find out about Aborigines?
The original people of America.
No. That's you of America. Okay. Please check.
Australia.
Please check. Please check. Okay, I give you the time. Really 6 minutes, not longer. Start now. 6 minutes, not longer. Not enough time. What's in the back?
The original people of America.
What's in the back? Yeah, you in the back. From you on. If you can sit together, it's good.
Make some notes.
Again, take your mobile phones out, or whatever you remember, whatever you know. Take a look at the term. Actually, no, not the term. Not the term. Take a look at Coconut Islands. Coconut Islands. Okay. All right. Then this side, brothers in the back.
Found it.
Yeah.
3%. Australia's
A little bit more challenging. I want you to take a look at the word Atnatu. This word. I want you to take a look at this word. Atnatu. If you can find it online, if you can find what it means. And the ladies, especially the lady from Guadeloupe. I want you to take a look at Abdullah Quilliam. Abdullah Quilliam. Okay, who was that? One right now. Okay, so 6 minutes really. Oh.
Yeah, that's just that. And
We only do one word.
It's the other way around actually, William Quilliam, but no, I'm not going to change it. William Quilliam, okay.
oh, there you go.
We only do Aboriginal.
What do you want to know?
We just do Aboriginal.
I want you to tell us something about this term.
Aboriginal.
Aboriginal.
Where, what, who, what.
Yeah, we only got one word. They got a
You have
word.
Aborigines, you
We got the
have...
top word.
Aborigines, no, we
What
get.
do you have?
We got the top word.
Have we got?
We got the top word, yeah.
You have Aborigines. No, I haven't written. You want me to write down Aborigines? Sorry.
Can you write for us this job, please?
Write all the words.
Okay. Now, at Natu, this one is for this group. Abdullah William Quilliam is for the girls. Aborigines is for you.
What do you want to know?
And for you at the back,
Coconut.
Coconut Islands. There we go.
What does he want to know?
Just waiting
Okay,
for
shall we then? You know what? Let's start straight away.
Yes.
Okay. Because we don't have that much time now. Good. Come on, let's start. Now, first group here in front, Aborigines. What have you found out? Who are the Aborigines? Where, what, how, who, why? Come on, quickly.
You say everything, innit?
What?
You're writing it down. They come from Asia about 40,000 years ago.
Okay, so figured out that they came originally from Asia around 40,000 years ago. Where to?
To
England.
Australia.
To Australia. These are the real Australians. Okay, not the cowboy guys, yeah? All right, these are the real Australians, right? So they're around how many percentage of the population? How big?
300,000 of them.
3%.
Around 2 to 3%, not more.
Yeah, 3,000 of them.
97,
Mainly
98% cowboys. And the
in the
rest?
north as well.
Yeah, well, okay, in the north a lot,
Yeah.
but most of them in Brisbane. Okay, we'll see that in China. Okay. Now, Aborigines are the original Australians, right? What happened to them? What do you think? Why are they just 2-3% if they're the original population of Australia? What happened to them?
Eradicated. They dispersed. They got
They
eradicated.
dispersed, so they decided to move away for the white guys to take. Yeah?
They got eradicated.
They were massacred.
They were massacred. Use the right word. They were massacred. Okay.
30 million.
So what happened? What do you think? Any idea?
In up until the 1950s, they were classed as fauna, plant objects. They weren't classed as humans, but there was a law passed that changed that.
In the mid-50s and 50s?
Somewhere on that. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Right, thank you very much. Now, first of all, you remember the issue of soulless people and all this stuff, right? Now, we have another sad part of Australia's history, where in Australia, the real Australians were classified not as human beings, so again, you dehumanize them in order to be able to do what they were doing to them. They used to take their children away and to put them in Christian schools to educate them, to give them a proper education, to civilize them. And they also, used to actually go into villages and just take lighter-skinned people, lighter-skinned Aborigines away and put them in towns to raise them to become proper Australians, according to them. For the ones who don't understand English properly, please understand that it's all irony what I'm doing here. Eh? This is all sarcasm. Okay? And if you don't know what this is, then go and check it. All right? So please, it's a very important point, a sad point of Australia's history, of the world history. Okay?
Didgeridoo.
Next to this one, very quick reminder of Australia. Actually, now it has come out. It has shed the light now. It's very, very important. There is a museum that opened in Melbourne last year. Okay, and this museum is the Islamic Museum of Australia. And it opened in Melbourne last year. And they have done a lot of research about actually how the Muslims, did they come in the 60s and the 70s? Where did they come from originally? Who are the Muslims in Australia? Any idea how Islam started in Australia? What do you think?
Trade.
Trade? Who? What?
I had some, I think Indonesia's version.
Well, as we have seen all over the world, as we have seen Africa spread through Africa because of trade, right? Islam spread through Asia because of trade. Islam also spread through Australia and Oceania because of trade. And who traded with whom? Indonesians, and look at the north of Australia, we will see actually why not, I can put it up now. Take a look at the map of Australia, because not many people are familiar with it, of course. Now, take a look at Australia, that's Australia, and exactly in the north of Australia, there's the closest island up there is an Indonesian island. Indonesia is the biggest Muslim nation in the world.
It's like 100%.
Indonesia is on top.
It's like 100% Muslim, isn't it?
Australia is down under, all the way. So Tasmania is this Tasmania, the island which is the furthest down to the south, okay? So in the north of Australia, there are islands that belong to the island nation of Indonesia, and they were Muslims at that time, and they traded with the Australians, especially with northern Australians. Of course, this is called the Northern Territories. The capital, Darwin. In Darwin and surrounding, there used to be villages of Aborigines. These Aboriginal villages had accepted Islam long before the first British even thought how to spell about Australia. You know, long before any European even thought of Australia. So there were Muslim villages, Aboriginal villages, because many of them got married to Indonesian traders. Traders just decided to stay there. Some of them took Aboriginal women with them. Have you ever heard of the Philippines, for example? There is, in the south of the Philippines, there is an island, okay, which, I don't know, anybody from that area maybe? No? In the south of the Philippines, Mindanao. Have you ever heard of it? Have you ever heard of the Mindanao Liberation Movement? Okay, they want to become independent. Why? Because in the south of the Philippines, there's many Muslims living. Have you looked at their complexion? Have you seen how dark these people are? Most of them. Very dark people, extremely dark people. Have you seen how Aborigines look? Dark people. They even classify as black in Australia.
Yes.
Now, it's said that many of these Aborigines decided to go on board with some of these Indonesians and went with Indonesians to Indonesia and to the Philippines, to the archipelago, you know, the Malay archipelago. So that you will find nowadays people that are called the Spaniards who went to Philippines became a Spanish colony, they call them negros. Negro. In Spanish, negro means black. Or Moros. Moro. You remember Moros? What is Moro?
Muslims, I think.
They used to call the Muslims in Spain Moros, which comes from the Greek word mavros, which means black. Black. So now do you understand why this is called Moro liberation? Why is it in the south? Why are they called Moros? And so on and so on. You see how important history is? Do you understand every time we're saying it over again? Do you see the importance of understanding what happened in the past, how we understand nowadays? Oh, if we understand what happened in the past, we can transfer it over to nowadays. That's why we do history. We don't do history like in school because we need to know what happened in 1492 or in 1682 or whatever. You know, we do history because we need to understand what happened in 1682 and what is the impact of us today. Okay? And this is the impact of us today. So, Aboriginal people accepted Islam because they came in contact with Indonesians and nobody put a sword on their neck. Nobody told them you have to. Okay? No Indonesian claimed land from the Australians. No Indonesian went to Australia and killed people in Australia. Nobody claimed land. In the contrast, they even paid Australian Aboriginal people to go and fish in their areas. Because they like, there was a certain, I don't know this dish, but there is a certain, what is it? Let me see, what is it called? Sandfish, has anybody heard of that? Sea cucumber or sandfish, I don't know what this is. Trepan. Who is from, are you Indonesian? Malay? Trepan? No? Any Indonesian Malay here? Yeah, trepan? Trepan? Trepan. It's translated as sea cucumber in English, or what did I call? Sandfish.
You don't know everything.
Anyway, obviously I don't expect you to know all of that. Okay, clear. But okay, that's what they were after. So they went to Australia because they were interested in that. And you know what? They did not say, guys, go into the interior, or we kill you guys because we are here the man, now we come to take over. They paid them even to be able to use their land. And the relationship between Australians and Indonesians at that time was very friendly. As I said, many accepted Islam, many of them moved with them up to Indonesia and to the Philippines, to archipelago. And now in contrast to what happened 200-300 years later, in the 1700s, 18th century. Okay, I don't think we have to go too deep into that. But when Captain Cook arrived in Australia, the first thing that they did, they thought it was, they claimed this land for the Queen. Okay, they claimed this land for the Queen, and it became British colony. Okay, I come here, I'm the man, so I do it, right? I told you, remember, and I can say this because I'm double European. I told you that also. I take this right upon me. Because as Europeans, quite racist, we're quite racist, okay? Europeans are quite racist people, okay? And we as Europeans believe, Europeans, I'm not including myself, they're alhamdulillah, but I still think that people in Europe believe that they're better than other people in the world. And we have seen that, we can see that in our history, friends. We can see that in our history. We can see it in history. You can see racism developed from here down, and not the other way around. South Africa became South Africa, as we know, the apartheid system in South Africa, because of the influence of the Dutch. Apartheid is not an African word. Apartheid is Dutch. Okay? And so many other things that we have said or we mentioned before. Now, okay. Now, so before Captain Cook arrived in Australia, there were Aboriginal villages in the north, mainly in the north of Australia. Now, you can imagine what happened to them when the Europeans arrived, right? So nowadays we just have some sources talking about them. We have no evidence. We have no people going back, being able to trace back their roots to these people from the northern territories. But there are Aborigines for that reason who accept Islam en masse nowadays in Australia. The ones in the back, what did you have again? You mentioned Aborigines, the ones in the back had? No. You had Coconut Islands. What is that?
Islands around Hawaii.
Hawaii, excellent. So we're talking about America now. No, man, we're talking about Australia now. So it has to do something, it has to do with Australia.
Northern Australia.
Okay. There are islands in the north of Australia, you don't see it here, but they're around here. Actually, they belong to Indonesia.
Yes.
But Australia claims them. They are it's a very small territory. I don't know how many islands they are.
Yes.
But they are, can you tell us maybe what you found out?
There's American. They
No, not America. Australia.
The Australian bought it
You got the wrong country.
after the Second War.
Sorry, what was it?
After the Second War,
Well,
it's a group of businessmen.
Oh, okay, I don't know.
They bought that things in 1947. They bought that land. They paid, I don't know, paid to...
The Cocos Island?
Yes.
No, but are you talking about the same island?
Hula,
Because
hula.
they belong to Australia.
Mhm.
They belong to Australia, clearly. They don't belong to anyone else. They're in the north of Australia. I'll show you another map later, inshallah. But these Cocos Islands, 80% Muslims. On the Coco Islands, the people who live there, it's a very small population, 600 people, 600 inhabitants, but 80% are Muslims, and they're all Australian citizens. Okay? It's divided. In the west, there are white Australian people, and in the east, there are Malay. Okay, people who are actually originally Malay. Okay? No alcohol is allowed on these islands. Okay? There is no crime rate. And they celebrate officially the Maulid every year. And not the Queen's birthday. Okay?
Bidah.
And the flag. And the flag is a Southern Cross with a palm tree and a crescent on it. Okay? Quite interesting. Excellent. Okay. So very interesting. Something that not even Australians know themselves. It is part of the territory, okay? Not even Australians know it themselves. It's very, very interesting. Now, the other two islands that you see here, where is that?
looks like New Zealand.
That is New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Okay? Australia and New Zealand, they are close to each other, all the way down. Okay?
All black.
New Zealand is 2 big islands. Okay? All right. Now, the picture you see in front, on top, is actually the one that everybody knows. Now, this one, Australia, I think everybody expects Australia to be like this, or even if you don't know, that's Australia. Some of the, well, that's not Sydney. No, Sydney is one. I think this one is Sydney, but this one is Brisbane. Different cities.
New Zealand has a native population as well.
Yes, I'm
Mountains.
not talking about the mountains. Yes, sir. You see that? Australia is a very developed, very modern country, mashallah. Beautiful, absolutely amazing. Whoever can get a job there, go. Now,
They have new beaches, isn't it?
can we quickly, before we move over to them, the ones in the back, can you mention, please, Atnatu? Have you found what this was?
Basically, it's in South Australia.
Yeah.
There's a guy that used to
No
worship,
bacon.
or it's a god that used to worship.
Okay, yeah. Okay, the Australian people, the Aborigines living in Australia were not one tribe or one people, they were all different tribes. Okay, many different Aboriginal people, many different languages, but what united them also was the belief, the ancestry belief. Have you heard of the ancestry belief? Like in certain parts of Africa, people believe in the ancestors, that they're around. Interestingly enough, the word for God in the Aboriginal language is Atnatu. What does it mean? The word for God, Atnatu, means one who does not go to the toilet.
The guy with that face.
One who does not go to the toilet. What does it mean? Islamically, we understand it's somebody who doesn't have needs. Subhanallah, look at that. Look at that. I find it amazing that these Aboriginal people had actually the same understanding of Allah that we have. Okay? Because, what do we know in Islam? It's in our fitrah. It's in our nature to understand that there is one God, and He's your creator, and He's above all, and He doesn't need, He has no needs. Okay?
Where? In which country? Which?
In Australia,
Victoria?
the Aborigines, in their language, the word for God is Atnatu, which means one who doesn't have any needs, doesn't have to go to the toilet. Okay? Amazing.
Yeah, we got it. Very good food on the move.
There are certain words in Aboriginal languages, especially in the north, 250 of them, that are actually Indo-Malay words. For example, words for white people is the same in Indo-Malaysian as it is in the Aboriginal language in the north. Words for money. Why? Why do you think? Because of trade. Because of the context. That shows you again it's proof for the context that they have. Okay? Now, yeah. Natu, thank you. And the last one was? No, we're coming back to Australia. So with regards to Australia. Now, quickly, these keywords for Australia. The Ghana, Australian camels, Islam in Fiji, Manila Beach riots, and Al-Huda Mosque in Dunedin, actually up to the Aborigines we mentioned. Okay. Now, the Ghan. Any idea what this was or is the Ghan?
Ghana?
Yeah. The Ghan is an abbreviation for Afghan.
Afghan, yeah.
Ah,
Ghan is an abbreviation for Afghan. Why? What? What does it have to do with Australia?
Trade.
Well, not directly trade, but there was something. It has to do with the second one. It has to do with the Australian camels. Have you seen Australia's camels? Where do you think the hell do camels come from in Australia? Exactly, they come from Central Asia.
Yeah.
They imported camels in the 19th century in order to explore the country, to go inside, because they found out, that's how smart they were still at that time, they found out that Australia desert, the land and temperature and climate that was in Australia, is equivalent to the way the desert, the climate and the structure of the land and everything is basically in Central Asia. So they said, hey, why don't we just take some of Central Asian guys, come over here, get them on their camels, import some camels that would be able to survive in this environment, and get some guys over here to basically build railways, explore the country and build railways. And that's exactly what these people did. They imported, they got laborers, they got workers from the area of what is nowadays Afghanistan, India, Pakistan. They called them all Afghans, and got camels over and started exploring the land. They started exploring the land. The white guys were sitting in the offices, right? So the Afghans started exploring the land and started doing manual work, labor. Okay? So nowadays Australia has such a good connection because of that time. You know, train, and then you can take the train from the south of Australia and go to the north, which can take you 2 days, I think. Okay? And basically that's all because of that time. Okay? Because they managed to explore the country like this. Camels stayed since that time, and they're a big problem nowadays. Eh? Camels in the interior of Australia are a big problem. Nowadays farmers are allowed to shoot them because they create problems. They are free. Okay? In the interior of Australia you will find camels, and they go to farms and destroy, of course, farmland, right? So for that reason, farmers, they're enemies there. They don't like camels.
Yes, I heard this. When they saw the camel the first time, they thought that's white animal. And
Well, yeah, they've never seen,
yeah.
they've never seen a camel before, yeah. So they did not know, yeah, okay. Good. Fiji, anybody knows the Fiji Islands?
Somewhere in the Pacific.
Somewhere in the Pacific, yeah. Indeed, somewhere in the Pacific, nice for holiday, yeah, beautiful. What else? There are Muslims in the Fiji Island, 7 to 8%. And they came originally, many of them came from India as workers, laborers, like in the Caribbean. Okay? Now, just a quick one. What about the Cronulla beach riots? Has anybody ever heard of them? What this was? The Cronulla beach riots. We're coming to modern times, yeah? No idea? The Cronulla beach riots. Cronulla is a beach, very famous beach in Sydney. Okay, and in 2005 there were riots, race riots that happened, unfortunately. Who do you think are the biggest population of people living nowadays in Australia who are Muslims?
Lebanese.
Very good. Most of them are, or many of them in certain areas, Sydney is Lebanese. In other areas, it's not Arabs, but Albanians, Balkan people, Albanians, Bosnians, and Turks. Okay, this is the biggest population, immigrant population of Muslims coming from Muslim countries. Lebanese play a very big role in Sydney. Okay, in Melbourne you will have a lot of Balkan people like Albanians, Kosovarians, Turks. And throughout the country you will find also Indonesians and Malays. But believe it or not, it's the same like in America. The Arabs in America are not the ones who represent Islam, as people might think, misunderstand, the misconception. But most of the Arabs in America are 60% of them are Christians. Whereas in Australia, most of the Indonesians are Christians. Most of them. So it's not Indonesians in Australia are the ones who brought Islam, not at all. Most of them are Christians, actually. That's why they went to Australia. Okay, so most of them come from the Balkan. Because there was a, well, why do you think Albanians and Kosovarians and Bosnians and Turks, how did they end up in Australia? What do you think?
Trade.
Trade?
Yes.
Not really.
Just
War. No, okay. You're talking about the recent war. No, they were there long before. They came in the 50s, 60s. When Australia needed workers to come and work, they did contract work. They signed contracts like in Europe, Germany and other countries. And they got people, they had a white-only policy. White-only policy, which meant they just wanted Europeans to come and work. But they kicked themselves in their behind because with these Europeans, many Muslims came, like Albanians, Kosovarians, Bosnians, and Turks. They did not want any other, they didn't want Asians, they didn't want Africans, they didn't want other races. Okay? So there was a white-only policy, and not only in Australia, by the way, also in America. Just they gave it up a little bit earlier. But the Australians in the 70s, they started getting already people from other countries in Asia, Africa, and now it's a policy of multiculturalism. Okay, like in Canada. Now, In Australia, they want this white-only policy got a lot of Europeans over. Australia is a very European country, actually, in that way. Very close to Britain and the British understanding British system. And really people are very close to Europe in their understanding. The Queen is still the head of Australia. Yeah. And they play each other's series. Have you seen how many Australian soap operas there are on TV? Neighbours, Far and Away. Say it, Far and Away, right? Far and Away. Another one, Australian. Anyway, there are here more than anywhere else in Europe. Okay, because of the close connections. And British series are played down there a lot. Okay, so there is a very close connection between Australia and Britain. So these Cronulla rights, that time in Sydney in 2005, it's a beach where it's known for many Lebanese families to go there and have the weekends there and grill. You know, in Australia, it's a barbecue culture. So when you buy a house or when you rent a house in Australia, the first thing they show you, where they're proud of, is the barbecue area. And the barbecue area is not just, you know, like here, like you buy, you know, a 2x2 on a table. You know, it's a whole room. Outside, the garden is a barbecue area. No joke. So that means people spend their times outside, right? Because of the climate, of course. Beautiful, mashallah. I think of it, you know, believe me, I'll leave when I have the chance. So really, it's amazing. They live outside and they just go inside to sleep. Like in many, you know, southern countries, mashallah. So now, Lebanese are known to go to this Cronulla beach. And they say officially, what happened that time was that some Lebanese men assaulted some women, and this all, you know, became a whole race thing. But we should not forget, 2005 was after 2001, September 11. And another important thing for Australia, more important for Australia, the Bali bombings, 2002, 2005. This affected the Australian population's ideas and outlook at Islam and the Muslims suddenly in Australia very much.
Yeah. Both okay. In that time, Canadian, I think so.
2005?
Yes, when that bomb in the Bali.
In Bali, the Bali bombings, yeah.
The most, I think it's Canadian on that hotel.
Oh, I don't know. Many Australians, because they do use, they do go a lot to Indonesia because it's closer, you know. But that was the main idea, I think, the main problem that there was, that 2000, that the Bali bombing, of course, after 9/11, but also the Bali bombing for the Australians played an important role. All right. This affected, and has affected ever since, the outlook towards Muslims. Nowadays, we have unfortunately also other things that happen in between, but you know, just to give you an idea, it's a general thing that I want to give you a general idea. There are Muslims from all over the world, in Australia as well, like in the States. There are Muslims from Bangladesh, from Asia in general, Muslims from Africa, Muslims from many parts of the world. All right, now, Al-Huda Mosque in Dunedin, I was corrected last time. Dunedin is the southernmost town in Australia. There is a mosque, which is the southernmost mosque in the world.
Dunedin is in New Zealand.
Sorry, it's in New Zealand.
Dunedin is
In New Zealand, yeah. There's all the way down, yeah, all the way on the island. I showed you what the island. Yes, that's right. In New Zealand, all the way down. That's right, on New Zealand. Dunedin, okay. And the Maori are the original people. We mentioned the Aborigines, the Australians, and the Maori are the real New Zealanders. Okay.
Yeah.
But there was a difference. The way that they dealt with the Maoris is a different way.
Rugby team.
Okay, the Maoris are, yeah, exactly. The Maoris are quite integrated, so it is a different approach that there was. Same people, but different approach. I mean, the British people. Different approach towards the indigenous people. And then the Balkan Muslims, I mentioned it. Balkan people, the Balkan Muslims, most of them are the ones that make the population, the biggest Muslim population are from the Balkans in Australia. Now, Chinese gold diggers. What do you think? What do I mention that? What is that? Chinese gold diggers. They dig gold. Yes. Why do you think? Why is it Now, how did Islam go to Australia? We mentioned it long before already because of the trade between Indonesia and Australia. There was a conflict.
There's something to do with everything's
How
made in
did
China.
New Zealand? How did New Zealand get Islam into the country? Through Chinese gold diggers. You will not believe it.
Oh.
Chinese gold diggers were the first Muslims to arrive in New Zealand in the 1800s. Okay? It's not known yet. I'm just saying, careful. It's not known yet if there was any trade, any contact with Indonesia or something. It's just not known. That does not mean that it didn't exist. I'm just saying, at this moment, what we know, any source refers to New Zealand as having the first Muslims coming from China, being Chinese gold diggers. And from that time on, of course, migration now. Okay? So that's the main thing. Okay. Now, these are some mosques in Australia. This one, as you can see, the architecture, where do you think these people come from originally? Exactly, Turks. You can see the architecture. This here, exactly, Asia, Central Asia, Iraq. This one here, no, it's more Turkish also, a mix of it. You know, Turkish and Balkan, Albania. Now,
Last one.
what is this here?
The Africa.
This is a real Australian masjid. This is a real Australian mosque, the first Australian mosque. The first mosque that we still know, that we know, because as we said, this is not in the north. In the north, there used to be other mosques, of course, we just don't, there's nothing there anymore. But this one here in the south, Melbourne, Sydney, in this area, you will find this mosque which has become, this is all a museum area. So you can nowadays go, and they've made it nicely into a museum. Basically, you can walk into different houses because the Afghan cavaliers from that time, 1800s, when they arrived in Australia, they were given the right to open their own houses and to live together in houses and everything. You know what I mean? They were men mainly, so they were living together in houses. And you will find on this territory, you will find the old houses which have become all museums. And the mosque has become a museum as well.
Can you pray?
You can. Nobody will give you back like in Spain, but it's small. It's very small. It was really made for 10 Afghans, you know? And that time the Afghans were smaller. So this is a real, and the first one that we know as an Australian mosque, that's one. And you know what? I think this is more representative for Australia than these things here, you know?
Yes.
All right? You know, obviously. Not because they were Afghans, but because it indicates how Islam came there.
Yes.
Okay? So, mashallah. Now, this, in the same territory that I showed you before, the house and the mosque, there's a graveyard. And this graveyard, of course, has people from that time, Afghans and people from Central Asia, who died there and they were buried there. So this is one typical example for one of the graves of the Afghan cavaliers. Okay? Again, it's in the same area where you'll find the museum, where you find the mosque. Everything is there. You can go and visit it nowadays. That's the Islamic Museum of Australia, nowadays in Melbourne. And this one is just a school, just to give you an idea. They have a lot of schools there, Islamic schools. The Islamic infrastructure is quite developed. Okay, everything is available. But again, do not take it for granted. The Anglo-Saxon world, and I keep saying that every time, and I bless, really, may Allah bless them for that, really. May Allah make these countries really, Muslim countries, because these guys here, the Anglo-Saxon countries, the British, the Australians, the South Africans, the Canadians, the Americans, you know, they all have given the Muslims and ethnic minorities and religious minorities so many rights. We don't even have them in the Muslim countries. Muslim countries. We don't have them in Muslim countries. They have so many rights in the Anglo-Saxon world. And listen, Anglo-Saxon world, that means not the French speakers, not France, definitely not the Germans and the German speakers, and nobody else. We were given, like in this case, again, and I want to say that here, we have the chance to be educated, about something like that, because we have an ISOC in this country. In Britain, we have ISOCs. Nowhere in Europe do we have ISOCs, Islamic societies. Don't take it for granted. Ask her from France. Do you really think there's no one in France? If you want to make a petition in Germany or in France, to open an Islamic society, you are lucky if you're allowed to go and study at the university. You will probably be interrogated every day in, day out. So we have this chance in this country and in these countries. So we have to make proper use of them. Okay? And educate Muslims and non-Muslims alike. That's why I keep saying, please bring some non-Muslims in the classroom. Let them be educated about what they normally don't hear and see. You know, they don't see these things. And they don't know them. Okay? So, again, now the Islamic Museum Australia opened last year its doors. And that's New Zealand, by the way. Beautiful, Auckland and Wellington. That's a mosque in New Zealand, just to give you a little bit of an idea. And that's Fiji. The Fiji Islands that we spoke about before, that's here, the Fiji Islands, right? New Zealand, Australia, please, your geographic knowledge, take a look at that here. That's Australia in the south, all the way down, New Zealand. In the north, Fiji, in the north of New Zealand, Fiji, the Fiji Islands. Indonesia, East Timor, and the Coconut Islands are somewhere here. Okay?
Do they have coconuts?
See that? Okay, a little bit oriented, you know a little bit what we're talking about now? Okay? So all the way in the south of Australia. Now, any questions with regards to Australia? That's the Fiji Islands, by the way. Just to make you feel a little bit, the Pacific Islands, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, 7% Muslims, okay? These are mosques in the Fiji Islands, okay? Again, you see the Indian or Hindu style if you want to. You remember what I mean with Hindu? Hindustani,
Mughal.
you know? Also Mughal, yeah, but don't forget the Mughals were the last ones, but there were Delhi Sultanate before them and so on and so on. So there were many Muslims before. Everybody thinks India was just Mughals, okay? So, yeah, and okay, so the architecture tells you where the people come from originally. You know, Indians, India, but it has created its own style. It's Indian, but it has something that if you see them and if you compare them to India, you will not find many of these mosques looking like this in India. They have a Fiji type of style. There's an Indian Fiji style. Okay? Any questions up to here? Anything that you would like to mention, to ask, to whatever?
No. No? No, I'm not asking.
Okay. Let's move on then. Tell us then, girls, tell us something about who was Abdullah Quilliam William, or William Quilliam actually, the other way around. Moving back to UK. Who was Abdullah William Quilliam?
Sounds like a revert. I'm just guessing. I haven't.
Yeah, let's see what they found out first of all, and then we come over to you. Otherwise, I will never see
I don't know. I'm just judging by the name.
Okay. He went to Morocco and to Algeria and Tunisia, yes, and he became Muslim. When was that? No, I mean, when, okay, which century was that? Century. 19th century, exactly, okay, 19th century, okay, Abdullah Quilliam William. Now you see his name was William Quilliam, and he accepted Abdullah as, when he accepted Islam, when he embraced Islam, in Morocco. He studied in Morocco and Algeria, Tunisia, he went there for a while, and he accepted Islam and came back to the UK, came back to Britain, and we are talking about the 19th century, guys, 1800s. Now, how many Muslims do you think there were in Britain at the time?
None.
Not really many, right? So, this man was of the upper class, high society, from Liverpool. He was a solicitor. Now in Liverpool, there's one thing. Liverpool, obviously, as we all know, port city, dealing with abroad. It had brought quite some Indians, and it had brought quite some Africans and other type of Muslims. So there was a contact with Muslims already at that time, because Liverpool is a port city, of course. But that did not mean that Liverpool was developed into that we have like nowadays in Liverpool or here, that we have mosques and all this stuff. No. But this man was actually the first Muslim in Britain to establish a masjid, a mosque. Yes. And this mosque, guys, this is the most mind-blowing thing, and I want you really to make use of this chance that you have here. This man, this mosque that was established that time, in the 19th century by Abdullah William Quilliam, exists till nowadays and has opened its doors last Ramadan. So please go and visit it. Please, in Liverpool, whoever has the chance, take your children. This is a part of our education. This is part of our, we have to educate and show our children. I took my children when they opened in Ramadan. We went there, we had iftar there. I met the Adam Kelwick, by the way, is the imam there.
Yes, and
You know?
here he's open on the first of the year. On
In
everybody,
Ramadan.
yes, when everybody like having a Christmas, he opened that time. He
Yeah.
said, actually, he said, the Eid is when you access to the Islam. He said,
Okay, so it is really beautiful. It's nice to go and see it. Jazakallah khair for the info. That's really nice to go and see it. It's part of our history, and it's part of UK history as well. Now, this is something that we should establish as well. I'm working at this moment, as you all know, on a curriculum, which I would like to introduce to several schools in the UK, where I would like to actually take children, for example, I mean, I'm talking about Muslim and non-Muslim alike, take them on a trip to Liverpool and go and visit this mosque. This is part of UK history, British history. It's British history, and you don't learn this at school. And it is an important part, I think, in order to understand why 2.5 million, 3 million people are living now in the UK who call themselves Muslims, you know, do not have just their roots in the 60s, but, and not only their roots in India, but also British people. Because through him, Abdullah Quilliam, through him, more than 600 people of the upper class, high society British accepted Islam. And that was in the 19th century.
yes.
This is an amazing, amazing result, I find, for somebody, you know.
Because they don't like to drink, and even I think,
Victorian,
yes, with their behavior is like with Islam behavior, so that they access easy and they believe what some say.
very true, yeah. There was such an attraction. He became very political, okay? Because that was a time of the Ottoman Empire as well, and that was a time that the British fought the Ottomans, actually. There was a time, there was crisis, you know, the Ottomans, towards the end of their time, fighting Europe and the Europeans. But, and he had to take a stand, he had to do that, and he was a politically active person. But Abdullah Quilliam was not, you know, one important thing, I think, what he did. He didn't, like most of our people who came here in the 60s, or, you know, your parents or whatever, or grandparents who came here in the 60s, you know, they were fighting to establish a mosque-looking building like in Karachi or Lahore, you know. But he did make use of his house, of his building that he had, which is still there, and he made it he made it a mosque, he made it a madrasa, he made it a school,
Yes.
he made it an orphanage. And I want you to tell me, how many Muslim children do you think there were at that time? None.
Yes.
All this orphanage was taking care of non-Muslim children.
Yes, for charity.
And the man was, mashallah, saying, you know, listen, there is no children, I'm not going to look, there is no, nothing that keeps me back from taking care. In the contrast, we have to take care of Muslim, non-Muslim children. It does make a difference.
So
Orphans, yes.
How big is it? I heard it's just 50 people, the maximum.
Yeah, this is what they have built out now.
Yes.
The building is massive, it's big, very big. But they're collecting money to build it all out. But you know what, that's the time now to go and see it. Because now if you go upstairs, for example, you will still see the old structure, and you will see the rooms are totally, you can basically, you know, you have to be careful how you walk because you might fall through it. Yes, it's in a very dangerous state. But now it's the time to go and visit it, because once it's fixed up and made nice, the effect is gone.
Yes.
Okay, the effect is gone. So yes, I urge you to take your children, take your wives, go out for Liverpool is a beautiful city, by the way, absolutely amazing, and it's nice to have this as a part on your. Sorry, what? I'm not comparing Portsmouth or something. We're not comparing any cities here. I'm just saying Liverpool is a beautiful city. It's nice to go and see it. Very interesting, very big history. Also sad parts of history, of course. Now, okay, so Abdullah, Quilliam, okay? Now, what else do we know about the Muslims in the UK? We're living in this country. What do we really know about the Muslims here? You know? How many Muslims live in this country?
They're made
What?
up of
What?
ethnic.
Long behind time.
Anything I'm saying is Allah Alam, isn't it?
They're made up of different ethnic.
Allah Alam, sure, true. We don't know because we are not considered Muslims in this country. That's true. Because you cannot really, you know, nobody's asking you for your religion. So this is something they don't know. But around.
Muslim by
3
name,
million,
yeah?
Muslim by name.
Okay.
Okay? So that
There's a lot there,
indicates
there's a lot there.
immigrants, but also people who have officially gone and said, British people, because we have more than 120,000 British people officially, who have accepted Islam, embraced Islam, and this goes according to the statistics of every mosque. So the statisticians have gone to mosques and have asked them, okay, mosque committees, okay, listen, how many conversions have you had? So they've looked into this one, and these are now the official numbers. Of course, unofficially, I don't know, do you have any conversion papers?
No.
No, right? Neither do I. I mean, do you have any conversion papers, your brother?
He's more.
Sorry?
This was.
No conversion papers, right? You didn't go to official mosques or something like that, right?
لا لا
He's born.
In Morocco.
أنا عربي.
Ah, I'm the Maghribi. Sorry. Man, I'm sorry.
It's because he looks English.
Sorry. Do you have any conversion?
No,
No, right? You didn't go to a mosque or something, you signed a paper or something? Nothing. Right? So, in our case here, we have 3 people who are not in the statistics. Okay? And how many more are there? So, we have now 120,000 officially. So, there are many more. All right. Now, but we're talking about 2.8 to 3 million Muslims in the UK. 2.8 to 3 million. Okay? That's around the amount. And that's where most of them live. Of course, London and area, don't forget London itself with a population of 8 million people, nearly, has 1 million Muslims. This is a massive urban area, but it's not the biggest one. Which one is the biggest one? In Europe. No, in Europe,
France.
What, Paris you mean? No, urban, I mean, not as a country. The biggest urban Muslim population in Europe, in Western, I mean in Europe, like non-Muslim country, we're not talking about Albania and Kosovo,
Near Turkey. Or
Moscow.
Moscow, yes.
Moscow, believe it or not, Moscow has 2 to 3 million Muslims.
So,
Okay? Moscow. Now, if we don't consider Istanbul, of course. Okay? All right. So, okay. So, London, 1 million. Now, furthermore, we have in the north, we have cities like Birmingham, right? Birmingham, Bradford, Leicester. Further north, then we have, yeah, well, Liverpool is okay. What is that? What is up here?
Yeah.
Is it? No, Manchester, it's too far. Is it too far up there? No. Yeah, might be because Liverpool is somewhere here, right? So Manchester is somewhere here. Anyway, we know Manchester has a big amount of, big population of Muslims. Birmingham, the bigger cities have definitely, but also the smaller cities you will
but
find.
when that content, when that happened, when you said 3 million, this is from 10 years ago or just?
No. The census, the recent census, the last census of 2011. 2011, the last one. There was nothing.
They need to do another one.
Yeah. Well, no, this one doesn't include Scotland. Anyway, it's just England. Okay, because most of the Muslims live in England, by the way.
No,
and in Wales, you will have them in Cardiff or in Swansea, that's it. And in Scotland, there are not that many in Edinburgh.
There's a big Islamic school being opened in Scotland.
Yeah, they're quite busy there because there are not that many. Islamophobia is not that crazy up there. You know? So,
I've got Scottish blood.
Well, you hear also, they found, without statistics, they found there's a lot of Christian, they live Christian. They said, we believe there is no God.
oh yeah, atheists. Yes. Actually, yeah. A very big rise of atheism in this country, and not only here, that's in general like this in the world. The biggest, after Christianity, the biggest faith, if you want to call it faith, in Australia is atheism. And then it's Islam. So actually there are more atheists than there are Muslims. Atheists. Now, yeah, okay. Okay, now, we talked about Abdullah Quilliam. We spoke about the 19th century, but do you really think that's where it stops? Do you really think there was no contact at all with the Muslims before in this country? You know, Britain, as an empire, of course, had contact with India and with other Muslims, but we're talking about the 18th and 19th century. What about before? You know, there was once a time when Offa was ruling. There was a certain king called, he was an Anglo-Saxon king, and you know that these people here, originally, they're Anglo-Saxons, which means the tribes that came over here, Anglos and Saxons. Saxons from Saxony. Where is Saxony? In Germany. Eastern Germany, right? Please, Eastern Germany, make sure. You know that. There's a difference between East and West. So, Eastern Germany, right? Saxony, and the people from, which were Vikings, from Scandinavia.
Yes.
Scandinavian people. So there's a very close connection. And they mixed, and in the end, they became the Anglo-Saxon people that we know them nowadays. And that's why you will find in the population, you will find blonde people like Abigail, You know, I assume that your ancestors were probably from Scandinavia originally. I just assume, right? But you will also find darker looking people. I've seen British people that I thought were Greeks or Italians. Okay, but they did not have, they did not come originally from the Mediterranean. Okay, but you will find, because Eastern Germany, you will find from Eastern Germany, you will find darker people. Now, I'm not dark in color, but you know, the hair, brown. Okay. But again, of course, we're talking about long, long time ago. Now, if you're talking about Offa, this king, Offa, of Mercia, he was a king between 757 and 796. Offa.
Mercia.
Offa of Mercia.
That's in Spain.
No, Mercia is here. Mercia is up there, look.
Yeah, I know, yeah. There's
Okay.
Mercia in Spain as well.
Is there a Mercia in Spain?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Offa of Mercia, 757 to 796. In the British Museum of London, and again, it's worth it a trip, a day trip, to take your children here in Southampton, Portsmouth, you can take them easily there. Sorry for that. Portsmouth, you can take them easily to London and go to the British Museum. Okay? And in the British Museum, you will find this. It says, on the one side of this coin, it says Offa Rex, which was Latin for King Offa. And on the other side, it says, La ilaha illallah,
Yes.
okay, and Muhammad Rasulullah. Shahada. These coins were in use during the time of Offa's period, when he was ruling Britain, Mercia, this year. England. There was no Britain, there was no, you know.
Now Daesh, they start.
And during that time, sorry?
Now Daesh, they start like this. IS.
They have their own
Currency. They made their own currency.
Oh, okay. Daesh, you used a new name, right? You used a new name now.
Daesh.
Wow, yeah.
That's what the
Okay.
Arabs call them.
That's
Right.
what it stands for.
Well, look, I mean, that's the Shahada. We should not mistake, like they're calling nowadays the Islamic flag, the black flag, yeah, okay, no, the ISIS flag. It's not ISIS flag, it's Islamic flag.
There's two types.
Yes.
Okay, let's not, you know.
There's two types of
All right, so let's just, okay, stay. Now, so in the 8th century, so when we're talking about 757 to 796, when King Offa was the Anglo-Saxon king, he had contact with Al-Andalus, Andalusian Muslims. The Muslims in Spain and in Portugal, right? There were contact, and there was trade. And there were relationships, okay? And it was not fights. And they found, again, these coins that he had made here in England, in Mercia, okay, to use them to be able to do trade with the Muslims in Spain. This is the first thing, the first ever that we know, first step that comes to understand that there was some kind of connection with the Muslims in this country, okay? In the 8th century already. Then, next to this one, there is something else. You can also see in the British Museum the Ballycotton cross, or actually what is it called? Ballycotton cross, from Ireland. In the north of Ireland, they found this cross. In the middle, do you see the basmala? It says Bismillah. That's a cross that the Irish used to use, okay?
What's the cross symbol?
And they found it in the south of Ireland, and it says Bismillah in there. Bismillah means in the name of Allah, in the name of God, right? So the Ballycotton cross was found in the 9th, was made in the 9th century, and was found recently. More explanation is not given. We don't know that much, or we don't want to know that much. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so it's just some indications for that already in the. You're early. We don't. Tomorrow we start at 9. You know, the 8th and the 9th century, right? There was already contact with the Muslims in this country. Okay. Furthermore, we don't know that much. Now, unfortunately, after that, there was other kind of contact, and this contact was not that nice. But before that, actually, there was the contact with the Crusaders. Richard Lionheart is known, who fought Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, Saladin, who was a Kurd, by the way. Not that it's of importance for us, but it's important to know that not every Muslim was an Arab or a Turk, as people misunderstand and think. But there were Berbers, and there were Kurds, and there were other kind of people, Indonesians, and so on. So, we had during the times of the Crusade, the first Crusade, who knows when was the first Crusade? When the Pope called the Christian brethren to come together and fight the Muslims, you know, to liberate their holy land. When was that? In 1095. That was the first crusade. Okay? And it was the only successful one, because Muslims did not expect to see some, you know, European crusaders coming down. That's why. All the others were, all of them, you know, there was absolutely nothing.
Where that happened? Which
1095.
Where?
Which country?
Jerusalem.
They went to Jerusalem, yes.
Uh-huh.
They went to what is nowadays Palestine.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's 1096.
Well, look, 1095 he made the declaration. 1096 they gathered the people and went down. Okay, so 95, 96. Okay? But the official declaration, he came out 1095 with it. And he tried to gather as many Christians as possible to come and join him to the crusade. Now, what helped him to come out and have the courage to do that was the crusade had started in Europe already in Spain. You remember? 1095, that time already, they were halfway through Spain. Portugal was nearly independent already. So this is what made them stronger, believe that, oh, we can beat the Muslims now. So they thought, okay, let's go down to Jerusalem and beat the Muslims. Now, something that we all know, we've heard of this, but something we have not heard is that when the Crusaders arrived, the Crusaders, not the peasants, right, because they gathered any kind of Christian together, and most of the peasants did not make it to go down to Jerusalem. They were not ready for that. They were like, you know, if you read the sources from that time, there were some uneducated people, of course. They would grab their women, their wives, and their children, babies, you know, and walk from England, Germany, down to Jerusalem, they thought, you know. So uneducated people, absolutely illiterate, you know. They thought Jerusalem was around the corner. And every time there is, I think in the Third Crusade, there is a source that shows us really, in the Third Crusade, when they started in Germany, or Central Europe, there was no Germany at that time, Central Europe, and they moved down, you know, in this type of style, you know, with the babies in their hands and everything, they would ask every city they arrived, are we Jerusalem? Are we Jerusalem? So it shows a little bit, you know, so yeah, as we said. So what is important for us to understand and to see is the contact between Christians and Muslims, despite the fact that it was, of course, battles and fights, there were also good things that came out of that, especially for the Christians, because they started accepting the idea of bathing regularly. They saw the Muslims, you know, and it's not an insult, I'm a European myself, okay? It's not an insult, it's just simply the truth that in Europe and until nowadays, you know, in the Orthodox Church, for example, where I'm originally from, right? In the Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox Church, if you go and ask a monk, you know, if they wash, they will tell you they wash once a year before they go to Athens. You know, they take a shower. Because, my son, it's not about the body, but about the soul. Quote. Quote. So, what happened that time, when they came in contact with the Muslims, and the ones in Spain and in Sicily had come in contact with the Muslims before, and that's why their ways had changed already when the Normans arrived in Sicily, and the Christians, you know, captured Spain and Portugal, they were the ones who actually who were using the idea of using water to wash. But at the same time, 1095, when they went as crusaders down to the Holy Land, they saw the Muslims washing, and it was even more important at that time in the heat to wash, right? So they started washing and bathing regularly. Okay? Now, next to this one, sugar and glass production, a number of branches of textile manufacturing, the art of castle fortification, and the spirit of chivalry. They're talking about the knights. The idea of knighthood is a Muslim idea. Okay? It's a Muslim idea. The troubadours, and we spoke about it in France. You remember we spoke about Fractinet, France? The troubadours, who are known to be something French, a French invention or French cultural whatever, these people were just copying the Arab Muslim poets. Okay, and it was the Muslims who brought poetry to that part of the world and made the troubadours what they were later. Okay, troubadours. So, next to this one, an important thing, it is there is a knight, Robert of St. Albans, English knight. He, Robert of St. Albans, St. Albans, outside of London, right? Robert of St. Albans, who was one of the Knight Templars, you know, one of these Crusader knights, okay? And he went down during the time of the Crusaders, and he came in contact with Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, and he changed his attitude towards Islam, so much so that he was the first known Muslim as a Crusader. He became a Muslim. Okay, and these are authentic sources. I'm not telling you something, you know, that I learned on this. Okay, he traveled to Jerusalem on a crusade, but ended up becoming Muslim in 1185, and married the great-granddaughter of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. So we have in the Middle East, as we know, if you go to the Lebanese, you see that. Do you know Lebanese people? You know Lebanese people. You guys, when you think of Lebanese people, you just see the women. Come on. You should talk to Emiratis, Qataris, you know, these guys.
You know, they're famous. They're in Brazil.
Famous, I know, they're famous.
And Australia.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So he got married to Salahuddin al-Ayyubi's great-granddaughter. So there is European blood, you know, in the Arab world. Of course, not only later much more, but that time already. Okay? Now, it's an amazing thing, I think. And there's many more, but we don't have accurate information. So the only thing I can tell you accurately is we know that Robert of St. Albans accepted Islam, stayed also in the Middle East, and from a crusader became a Muslim. 1185. Next to this one, another interesting thing that happened, there was an English scientist, Abdullah of Bath. Abdullah of Bath. He was a scientist. This Abdullah of Bath traveled in the 12th century to Al-Andalus and to Sicily, so to Spain and to Portugal, which was under Muslim rule, and most probably also to North Africa. He learned Arabic and translated works from Euclid, Greek, about geometry and Al-Khwarizmi. So, when he came back home in 1126 to England, he brought his translations where they received public recognition, and he was the hero of the world. He was the hero of England that time because he so-called came up with something new. This was already in possession of the Muslims. So he had learned, as many others had. They went to Spain, to Al-Andalus, to the universities that were established in North Africa or in Spain under Muslim rule, or Portugal, and came back with that knowledge to Europe. And that's what started the idea of the Renaissance, humanism, all the stuff that later became so important for Europe to come to the point where it is now. Okay? All right. Anything up to here? Yes?
How early was the Woking masjid?
We're coming to this one.
Oh,
Very late.
Okay.
We're still talking about 12th, 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th century. Very early. It was very late. Anything else? Any question else? Anything?
Bath. Bath. Why is it called Bath, that city?
Because of the spas there.
So who brought that to the UK?
Well, actually, yeah, the Romans were the first ones here in Europe to bring Roman Greeks. They were the first ones to come up with the idea of spas, but the ones who reinstalled them were Muslims. And not only here in Sicily, in Spain. There's no hammams, the hammams. You go to Spain, you'll see hammams. Okay. Or in Greece. Yeah.
I spoke with the British man regarding that path, and he said, no, the first one, Greek. They brought
the Romans, yeah.
Yes, to UK.
Yeah, the Romans were the first ones to bring spas and the idea of bathing, the bathing culture.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean the idea of not bathing, the idea of spas.
Yeah.
Okay. The idea of bathing and using water to wash and all this came later. Okay. It's not the same thing. Okay? The idea of spas, using spas to go and sweat.
Yes.
Okay?
Spa, yeah.
And they use different ways. The spas later, of course, were more developed.
Yes.
Of course. In the 16th century, very interesting, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I in the 16th century, there were more English people living in North Africa than in all English colonies in North America. 5,000 English reverts alone in Algiers. 5,000 English people who accepted Islam were living in Algiers, which is in Algeria. And that was in the 16th century. Okay? And we have quotes, and I don't have time for all of them, but you can find it if you want to. There is enough evidence that during that time, many English people, and I'm mentioning English because we are here, but Europeans accepted rather to live in the Muslim world than to come back here. Some of them were kept prisoners of wars during the time of the wars, and many of them, when they were set free, they didn't want to come back to Europe. The act of becoming Muslim was called turning Turk. I did not know that. We still use it in Greek nowadays. Turning Turk, becoming a Turk. Okay? So, interestingly enough, another interesting fact again, the advisor to the Moroccan ambassador was called James Rowland, and the Moorish king's executioner, Absalom, was a butcher from Exeter. The British Council of Egypt embraced Islam in 1606 and disappeared from public records. Such an act was considered unacceptable, if not even treason to the crown. Guys, we're talking about that time. We still have this mentality in Greece nowadays, in the 21st century, so there's nothing to laugh about. There's absolutely no. Okay? So, in the 1580s, the economic and political ties between Britain and the Ottoman Empire were strengthened between Queen Elizabeth I, right, and Sultan Murad. And when Sultan Murad was asked to help Queen Elizabeth against the Spaniards, the Spanish Armada sank in 1588. Very important, the biggest armada ever at the time. And who helped them to fight them? The Ottomans. Okay? In the 17th century, we're coming to the European Enlightenment, the century of the European Enlightenment. What does it mean? What is the European Enlightenment all about? I mentioned humanism before. I mentioned the Renaissance. All this type of, all these words, they're interlinked. Enlightenment. What does it mean? Any idea quickly?
Modern civilization.
Yeah, but what? Okay, modern civilization, okay. What falls under that?
Rationality.
Rationality, thank you. Rationality. Suddenly Europeans were allowed to start reasoning.
Yes.
Who didn't allow them before?
Church.
The church. The Catholic Church and the clergy, they were the only ones who could read and write in the Middle Ages. Nobody else was allowed and could read and write because they were busy with, making some food for their families. The situation in the Middle Ages in Europe was like this, that basically the clergy, the court of the king, they were the elite, they were ruling the country, and everybody else was under them, like a kind of, slavery, if you want to. Okay? Now, it has gone that far that many of these people, that time, peasants, were, of course, not happy with the situation. And many of them revolted during that time. And that, in the end, also brought the French Revolution in 1789. During the time of the European Enlightenment in the 17th century, 1600s, there was the Ottoman Empire. Okay? During that time, Europe was developing in such a rapid way. Machines were invented. Suddenly the Industrial Revolution came slowly also hit in. So machines, textile industry, all this stuff, and people started questioning what they had to believe before. Meaning not only religion, but in general. They started questioning the idea of them ruling us, of them being the elite, being able to read and write, and us basically not even knowing how to read and write our names. And how did they justify the later revolutions? The French Revolution was what exactly? What was the revolution about? Who did they kill? Who did they persecute on the streets? First of all, they killed the king. But then, what did they do then? Who did they persecute on the streets? Who had a problem during the French Revolution mainly? The clergy, the church.
Church, yes.
It was a revolution against their church, and it was against their habits and them ruling the country. That's what it was, because no king and queen could rule without the okay of the church. Okay, the land belonged to the church and to the pope. So this all education, there was no education for the poor people, for the peasants. This was all in the hand of the church. So the French Revolution came up to say, no guys, it's for the people. We are the people, and we want to educate ourselves, and we want to enlighten ourselves. We don't need this, you know, what you put upon us. And this turned such a way that many people from that time became atheists, meaning they started not believing in religion because they didn't believe in Christianity anymore. And for them, Christianity was the religion they knew, the only one they knew, and that makes everything equal and the same. Have you heard nowadays when you speak to people, average people in Europe, and you tell them, you know, about Islam or something, they say, it's all the same, man. Especially if, you know, Greek people, you tell them, you know, listen, Islam is not what you think, what you know about Christianity. We don't have clergy, we don't have priests in Islam. Nah, it's all the same. Don't you have imams and mullahs? It's all the same. You know, what they do is they transfer what they know over to Islam, think they know, and then this becomes the same to them. So that's why, do you understand the situation in France now? Do you understand why it's such a stern, fundamentally strict, you know, secular country? You know, a radical secular country. Okay? So in such a way that they hate any kind of religion. But one thing that has developed in the last couple of years is these European countries here, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in Christianity, they're losing their people every day. But they identify themselves with Christianity as part of their identity. Not as part of religion, it's not religion, it's just part of identity. Now the question that I always ask them is, I did not know that Jesus was Swedish. So if you accept Jesus and his teachings as being your teachings in this country of Europe, in this continent of Europe, in your country, who came from the same area like all the other prophets came, then why don't you accept other religions? And by the way, the Jews were longer here before them. So, if you want to take it that way, then obviously the Jews have more rights to Europe than the Christians. Right?
Church of England.
So, the Enlightenment. One important thing that I would like to mention here, we have a certain person, an English scholar called Edward Pocock. He translated some Arabic works by Al-Razin ibn Sina on the health benefits of drinking coffee. Because now listen to that. When coffee came to Europe through the Ottomans, and they opened the first coffee houses in Britain or in Austria or in Germany, the church started rebellion because they said, in this bean there is Satan. And if you drink coffee, you become Muslim. So please, let's close down coffee houses, or let's not open them at all. This is a drug to change our people, to make them Muslims. You're laughing, but you know what? This argumentation and reasoning is the same, just using some other things nowadays. They say, don't go to the mosque. My mother was saying, don't go to the mosque, they will make you Turk. Don't go there.
It's like
Halal meat. Haven't I heard recently, you will believe it or not, haven't I heard recently in English among the English average people, of course, you know, they don't know that much, but don't they say, you know, I don't buy halal meat, I don't know what they put in there. Why is it halal? What does it mean? You have no idea what it means, exactly. But then in America, wasn't there somebody, what was her name again, who said, I would not want to buy halal meat. I would rather want to have the meat that we normally have, which is stunt meat, you know, full of hormones. It's great. Well, have it if you want to. That's fine, nobody keeps you back. But have you ever looked into what it means to have halal meat? You know? So, this man translated works from Al-Razin ibn Sina on the health benefits of drinking coffee, as well as Ibn Tufail's Hay ibn Yaqsan, which means the self-taught philosopher. The self-taught philosopher. That was a work written by a Muslim from Al-Andalus, from Spain. And listen to the story of this self-taught philosopher. This work became a European bestseller that combined Islamic beliefs with Aristotelian philosophy, Aristotle, where a boy examines the world around him, rising through the stages of reason to the knowledge of God. Now, the story is the following. There is a boy, okay, who starts questioning the surrounding and the world and says, yeah, what am I doing here? What is this around me? How long am I going to live? Why don't we live forever? Why do we die? These are questions. The answers are religious answers, but not Christianity. Christianity does not give you the answers. So what does he do? He translates the Arabic word, the Muslim, the Arabic word in Arabic, and it becomes a bestseller in Europe, and helps them even more going to fight the church, actually, the church hierarchy at that time. So this helps them to start reasoning, finally, using their brains instead of using the church's brain, who didn't allow them to think about, the universe. For the church, and Aristotle the same, the word, the earth, is the center of the universe. Until nowadays, the Catholic Church, officially, the doctrine is, the center of the universe is the earth. And we all know this is absolute nonsense, right, scientifically. So science and Christianity doesn't go together. But science and Islam does. Because it's not what we say in Islam, in the contrary. And that's suddenly what came in there, and people started reasoning and say, hey, Christianity is a problem for us. We don't want religion. They didn't say Christianity, they said we don't want religion. Thinking that everything is the same. Okay?
Secularism.
Exactly. And it turned into what it is nowadays. Radical, fanatic, fascist secularism. Clearly. It's fascist secularism, absolutely. Now, quickly now, the last towards the end. We have many more people that we need to discuss, but we have them here. Sayyidi Muhammad, who again, if you go to Brighton, by the way, whoever has the chance to go to Brighton, please do. We have in Brighton, what is that now?
Can you?
Yeah, in Brighton, this man here, Sayyidi Muhammad, or Sheikh bin Muhammad, his grave is in Brighton, and this is Mahomet's bath. This man established the first coffee house in London, 1810, and the first bath house. And they were so fascinated by him because he started telling them how to wash. And they made him the shampooing queen of the shampooing, what is it, man? The queen made him, let me see. Here, he was so successful that he was appointed shampooing surgeon to His Majesty George IV. Amazing, isn't it? You come over to tell him how to wash, do you shampoo? Which he must have been using for ages. And he becomes the surgeon, shampooing surgeon, to His Majesty George IV. So, now, uncivilized Muslims now, isn't it? So now, quickly, the sailors, the Lascars as they're called, because they come from Arabic al-Azrar, right, from Lascars, they came from Yemen. They came in the 19th century working on the docks here. And this man here, a very interesting case, this is Queen Victoria. If you look at this man, he was a servant, they say, officially, but he was nowhere close to being a servant. In the country, he was her teacher. The Queen, and these are official sources again, the Queen would learn from Munshi Abdul Karim, Hindustani as they called it at that time, so the Indian language, right, Urdu, Hindi. And she would encourage family members and the court to learn Hindustani. She was fascinated by the Hindustani culture, okay, which was the Mughal culture, right, the last one. So this man here, Munshi Abdul Karim, made history at the court. We don't know, there are many stories about them. Let's leave it like this. But it went so far that people started envying the relationship that these two had, that they were just waiting for the Queen to die. And as soon as the Queen died, they sent him and his family back to India. The very next day on the boat, they found the ship straight, boom, back to India. So, fascination. Have you read the recent things about Churchill? Have you read this one? It's going around Facebook. That Winston Churchill was fascinated by the Orient, he was fascinated by Islam and the Muslims, and he actually considered embracing Islam. There is a letter that is going around on Facebook that his who was it? His
It was a diary or something.
no, there's a letter that
It was a relative. It was a relative.
a relative who wrote a letter to him asking him please not to embrace Islam, to consider it. Okay? Winston Churchill. Now, and many more. We don't have time for all this, but this is basically coming towards the end. Gives you a little bit of an idea. Now, Abdullah Quilliam, as we just mentioned it, that is his house, which is still there. Okay? That's the man himself. That used to be the mosque, what it looked like before, which is a room in the house. And this is the one that takes around 50, 60 people nowadays, which they fixed up. But the rest of the house, which was an orphanage, printing house, a library, everything, is still under construction. They're still busy with it. They need money, of course. You know, that's the typical problems that we all have, okay? Doing these things. Now, Masjid al-Woking, the mosque in Woking, that was a second mosque that was established, purpose building. But the first real mosque looking with architecture like Indian, as you can see, you know, in the UK. Okay? Taj Mahal, yes, Indian, exactly. And it's still there. Please, again, if you have the chance to go and see the Woking Mosque and go to Woking. It's interesting. I never expected. I really, they made it in Woking. It's somewhere in the middle of nowhere, actually. Next to an Asda, by the way, nowadays. In case you need something, you go to Woking, you go to Asda also. So I took my children there to go and see this mosque. And soon, by the way, inshallah, if I'm there next year, if I'm coming back again, I will have a DVD also with regards to Islam in Britain. I'll be discussing Britain. So, the last ending points, basically, the Shah Jahan Mosque, by the way, you know that it was called Shah Jahan Mosque, or is called Shah Jahan, because the female ruler of the Indian princely state of Bhopal, the Begum Shah Jahan, was the one who provided the necessary money and support to build this mosque.
What year was it?
1889. 1889. All right? Now, much more. Much more. But I hope I've given you a little bit of an idea. Islam is not imported into this country. It was not imported in the 1960s, as we all believe wrongly. Okay? And not only into this country, but into Europe. It is part of Europe. It is part of this country as well. British people were the first ones to actually make Islam, you know, make people know about Islam. That was in the 19th century here. And it was Abdullah Quilliam. And he was very British. Couldn't be more British. He's definitely more British than I. Okay? And 600 other people, through his hands, who accepted Islam. Ambassadors, consultants of companies, all upper class people. Okay? And he was focusing on this type of clientele, let's put it that way. Now, any question? Anything that wants to be mentioned here? Before we go over, inshallah, I have to finish. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's all right, 8 o'clock, okay? I would like to give Abigail also a chance. We have a lady here today who, she can explain better what she's doing. But I would like to give her another 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something to explain to you. Actually, she would like to have your help. And she's doing something for her thesis, right? Okay? So it would be nice to, if you could help her out a little bit what she's doing, obviously. And I hope it has enlightened you as well what we're doing here today, what we did today, and what we're doing in general. And if there are no more questions, I would like to give over to her. And please, it's the last chance today, whoever wants to buy the books and the DVD still before I go home. I go home today, we're finishing off here. There's still so much to discuss, I know. We didn't have time for everything, of course not, but I hope it gave you a teaser. It's a teaser, it gave you a little bit of a hint to move on and find out more about it, okay? So yeah, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.